The red sun of Kepler 442b was setting behind the purple mountains when the alarms started screaming across mining colony Delta 7. Forman Kong Minho dropped his coffee mug and ran to the control center. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floors as workers scattered to their emergency stations. "What do we have, Park?" Minho shouted to his head engineer Park Jiwoo, who was staring at the sensor screens with wide eyes. "Sir, you need to see this," Jiwoo said, his voice shaking. "Something big is coming toward us from the forest. The computer says it matches no known friendly species." Minho looked at the green glowing screen. A large red dot was moving slowly but steadily toward their mining base. The size readings made his stomach drop. Whatever was out there was at least 3 meters tall and moving on 4 legs like some giant animal. "Distance?" Minho asked. 2 kilometers and closing, replied Lee Do-yun, the colony's security chief. He was already putting on his armor and checking his weapon. "Sir, the computer identified it. It's a Vorthok." The control room went completely silent. Everyone had heard the stories about Vortheks. They were the galaxy's most feared predators. Wolf-like creatures that stood as tall as small trees and could tear apart metal with their claws. No human had ever seen one and lived to tell about it. They lived in the deep forest worlds and hunted anything that moved. "Are you sure?" Minho asked, hoping the computer was wrong. "Computer confirms it, sir," Do-yun said. "Black fur, 4 legs. Massive size, it's definitely a Vorthek, and sir, it's alone." Minho felt sweat running down his face. Their mining colony had 43 people. They had basic weapons and some mining equipment that could be used for defense. But against a Vorthek, they might as well throw rocks. "Wake everyone up," Minho ordered. "Get all families into the deep bunkers. Seal the blast doors. Turn on every defensive system we have." The next few minutes were chaos. People ran everywhere grabbing children and emergency supplies. The colony's powerful lights turned on, making the area around their buildings bright as day. The defensive turrets came online with mechanical whirring sounds. "Sir," called out Kim So-man, the colony's doctor, "should I prepare the medical bay for injuries?" "Yes," Minho said sadly. "Prepare for the worst." Through the thick windows of the control center, Minho could see the forest edge. The trees were tall and dark, and somewhere in there was something that could kill them all. He had been a foreman on 6 different worlds, but he had never faced anything like this. 1 kilometer now, Jiwoo reported. "It's moving slower than before." "Maybe it's being careful," Do-yun suggested as he loaded more power cells into his rifle. "Vortheks are smart." "It probably knows we can see it coming," Minho nodded. "That made it worse somehow. A stupid animal might just attack wildly. But a smart predator would plan its attack perfectly." "Sir, look at this," said Yoon Tae-young, their young scientist. He was pointing at a different screen that showed heat readings. "The creature's body temperature is strange. It seems stressed or tired." "Maybe it's sick," suggested someone. "Or maybe it's hungry," Do-yun said grimly. The minutes crawled by like hours. Finally, the motion sensors at the forest edge started beeping. Whatever was coming was almost there. "Everyone be ready," Minho said into his communicator. "It's almost here." The forest edge was 300 meters from their main buildings. The defensive lights created a bright circle around the colony, but beyond that everything was dark shadows. They waited and watched. Then they saw it. The Vorthek stepped out of the trees and into the light. It was even bigger than the sensors had said. Its black fur seemed to absorb light, making it look like a living shadow. Its yellow eyes reflected the bright lights like stars. Its claws were as long as kitchen knives, and they scraped against the rocky ground as it walked. But something was wrong. The creature moved slowly, almost carefully. Its huge head was down, and its ears were flat against its skull. Most strange of all, it stopped walking when it reached the edge of their weapon range. "Why did it stop?" whispered Jiwoo. "I don't know," Minho replied, but he was thinking hard. In all the stories he had heard about Vortheks, they never hesitated. They attacked, fast and without mercy. This one was acting different. The great beast stood there for several long minutes. Then it did something that made everyone gasp. It sat down like a dog and lowered its massive head until it was almost touching the ground. "What is it doing?" asked Dr. Kim. "I think," said Minho slowly, "I think it's trying to show us it's not going to attack." "That's impossible," Do-young said. "Vorthax don't communicate with other species. They just kill and eat everything." But the creature wasn't moving to attack. Instead, it lifted one of its huge paws and began scratching something in the dirt. The motion was careful and deliberate, like it was drawing. "Can you see what it's making?" Minho asked Tae-young, who was using the long-range cameras. "Give me a second to focus," the scientist said. After a moment, he looked up with a shocked expression. "Sir, it looks like pictures, simple drawings." "What kind of pictures?" "Well, there's what looks like two figures, one big, one smaller. The smaller one appears to be lying down. And, sir, there are marks that might be meant to show the smaller figure is hurt or in pain." Minho felt his heart beating fast. Could it be possible? Was this deadly predator trying to ask for help? The Vorthak finished its drawings and looked directly at the control center. Even from this distance, Minho could see those burning yellow eyes. But instead of hate or hunger, he saw something he never expected to see in the eyes of the galaxy's most dangerous predator. He saw desperation. The creature stood up slowly and took one small step forward. Then it sat down again and waited. It was the most careful, polite approach Minho had ever seen from any wild animal. "Sir," said Do-young quietly, "what do we do?" Minho looked around the control room at his people. They were scared, but they were watching him, waiting for his decision. Outside, the most feared creature in the galaxy sat patiently in the light, waiting for an answer to its silent plea for help. For the first time in his life, Kang Minho was about to make first contact with an alien species. And that species was asking him for help. Forman Kang Minho stood at the edge of the safety barrier, looking at the massive black creature that waited patiently in the bright lights. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Behind him, Dr. Kim So-min checked her medical. "Scanner for the 10th time. Are you sure about this, sir?" asked Lee Do-yun, his hand still on his weapon. "We could be walking into a trap." "Look at it, Do-yun," Minho said quietly. "Does that look like a creature planning an attack?" The Vorthak had not moved for 20 minutes. It sat like a giant dog, waiting. Sometimes it would look toward the forest, then back at the humans. Its body language spoke of worry and fear, not aggression. "Dr. Kim, what does your scanner tell?" "You about it?" Minho asked. "The readings are strange, sir," she replied, studying the small screen. "Its heart rate is elevated, but not like an animal preparing to fight. More like something under great stress. And, sir, I'm detecting chemical markers that suggest emotional distress." Yoon Tae-young, the colony's xenobiologist, stepped forward. He was young and excited about the chance to study an alien creature up close. "Sir, this could be the discovery of a lifetime. We know so little about Vorthak behavior. Maybe they're not just mindless killers. They've destroyed entire settlements." Do-yun reminded them. "Killed thousands of people across the galaxy." "But what if they had reasons?" Tae-young asked. "What if we just never understood what those reasons were?" Minho made his decision. "Dr. Kim, Tae-young, you're with me. Everyone else stays here and, keeps watch. If this goes bad, seal the colony and call for help." "Sir, let me come too," Do-yun said. "You'll need protection." "No weapons," Minho said firmly. "If we're going to trust it, we have to show trust in return." The three humans walked slowly toward the waiting creature. With each step, the Vorthak seemed to grow larger. Up close, its size was truly frightening. Its shoulders were level with Minho's head. Its claws were longer than his fingers. But the creature remained perfectly still as they approached. When they were 10 meters away, the Vorthak made a soft sound. It was not a growl or roar, but something almost like a whimper. Then it stood up and began walking toward the forest, looking back at them as if asking them to follow. "It wants us to come with it," Dr. Kim said with wonder in her voice. "This is either very brave or very stupid," Minho muttered. But he followed the creature anyway. The Vorthak led them into the crystal caves that ran beneath the forest. These caves were filled with beautiful blue and purple crystals that glowed with their own light. The mining colony had discovered them months ago, but they were too unstable to mine safely. Deep in the caves, the Vorthak stopped and made another soft sound. This time it was different, almost like it was calling to someone. From the shadows ahead came an answering call, weak and pained. "There's another one," whispered Taeyong. The second Vorthak was smaller and covered in silver fur instead of black. She was lying on her side among a pile of soft moss, and even from a distance they could see she was in trouble. Her breathing was fast and shallow, and her silver fur was dull and lifeless. "She's pregnant," Dr. Kim said, her medical scanner. "Beeping rapidly, very pregnant, and she's in serious distress." The black Vorthak, who they would later learn was called Shadowfang, moved to his mate's side. He gently touched her head with his massive paw and made soothing sounds. The silver female, Moonhowl, opened her golden eyes and looked at the humans. Instead of fear or anger, her eyes showed only exhaustion and pain. "What's wrong with her?" Minho asked. Dr. Kim was running every scan her equipment could perform. "Multiple problems, sir?" "She's severely malnourished, dehydrated, and showing signs of complications with her pregnancy. Based on these readings, I'd say she's been trapped here for days without food or water." Taeyong was examining the cave around them. "Sir, look at this," he called from near the entrance. "There was a cave in here recently. See how the rocks are freshly broken? This whole section collapsed and blocked the way out. So she's been trapped in here," Minho said, understanding. "And he couldn't move the rocks by himself." "But sir," Dr. Kim said, her voice filled with concern, "she's carrying twins. And according to these scans, she doesn't have much time left. The babies are growing rapidly and demanding more nutrition than her body can provide." Shadowfang seemed to understand they were discussing his mate. He made more sounds, urgent and pleading. Then he did something remarkable. He carefully picked up a piece of the glowing crystal moss in his mouth and brought it to the humans. "He's showing us what she needs," Taeyong said excitedly. "This moss must be part of their diet." Dr. Kim scanned the moss sample. "The readings are incredible. This moss contains proteins and minerals I've never seen before. It's like a perfect nutrition source designed specifically for their species. So we just need to get more moss," Minho said. "It's not that simple, sir," Taeyong said, looking around the damaged cave. "The cave-in destroyed all the moss that was growing here. And this type of moss only grows in very specific conditions deep underground. Where else can we find it?" Taeyong checked his geological scanner. "The nearest source would be in the Scarix territory, about 50 kilometers north. But sir, the Scarix have been raiding our supply ships for months. Going there would be extremely dangerous." Dr. Kim was still scanning Moonhowl. "We might have another option. My equipment suggests that with some modification, our food replicators might be able to create a synthetic version of the proteins she needs. It wouldn't be as good as the real moss, but it might keep her alive long enough for us to find a permanent solution." Shadowfang watched them talking and seemed to sense they were trying to help. He moved closer to Minho and did something that shocked everyone. The deadly predator lowered his massive head and gently touched Minho's hand with his nose. It was a gesture of trust from a creature that had probably never trusted any other species. "We have to help them," Dr. Kim said softly. "She'd die if we don't, and so will her babies." "The Scarix won't just let us take their moss," Minho pointed out. "They'll see it as an act of war. Maybe we don't have to fight them," Taeyong suggested. "Maybe Shadowfang knows another way." As if understanding, Shadowfang made a series of sounds and began scratching new pictures in the cave floor. This time his drawings showed routes through the forest, hidden paths that avoided the main Scarix settlements. He's offering to guide. U.S., Minho realized. He knows secret ways through their territory. Dr. Kim's scanner beeped urgently. "Sir, we need to decide quickly. Her condition is getting worse. Even with synthetic proteins, she has maybe 72 hours before it's too late." Minho looked at the silver female lying in the moss, her sides rising and falling with difficult breaths. He thought about the risk to his colony, the danger of going into Scarix territory, and the possibility that they were making a terrible mistake. Then he looked at Shadowfang, who was watching him with those burning yellow eyes that now held nothing but desperate hope. "Dr. Kim, start working on those synthetic proteins immediately," Minho decided. "Tae-young, study everything you can about Vorthic biology. We're going to save her." Shadowfang seemed to understand. He touched Minho's hand again, then moved to his mate's side and began making soft, comforting sounds. For the first time, the deadly predator known across the galaxy as Unstoppable Death looked like what he really was, a husband terrified of losing his family. Back at the colony, the emergency meeting room was filled with worried voices. Forman Kong Minho sat at the head of the table while his senior staff argued about what to do next. Dr. Kim Soman had just finished explaining Moonhow's condition to everyone. "This is madness," said mining supervisor Choi Hyun-woo, shaking his head. "We're talking about risking the entire colony for 2 alien wolves. What if this is all a trick?" "Look at the medical scans, Hyun-woo," Dr. Kim replied, showing the data on her tablet. "No creature can fake these readings." "She's really dying, and so are her babies." Jang Minji, the colony's communications officer, spoke up from her workstation. "Sir, I've been monitoring Scarix patrol signals. They've increased their activity in the northern sector by 40%. If we try to get to the moss caves, they'll detect us for sure." "What about the synthetic proteins?" asked INHO engineer. Choi Hyun-woo pulled up technical diagrams on the main screen. "I've been working on modifying our food replicator since you called. The good news is that it's possible. The bad news is that we'll need to use most of our emergency food supplies to create enough synthetic protein for the mother and her babies." "How much emergency food?" asked Park Ji-woo. "About 60% of our reserves," Hyun-woo admitted. "If something goes wrong with our regular supply drops, we could be in serious trouble." The room went quiet. Everyone knew that supply ships sometimes got delayed or destroyed by Scarix raiders. Using their emergency food could mean death for the human colonists if things went bad. "There's another problem," said Dr. Kim. "The synthetic proteins will only work for a few days. The babies are growing so fast that they need increasingly complex nutrients. Eventually, we'll have to get the real crystal moss or we'll lose them." Yoon Tae-young had been studying the geological surveys on his computer. "The Scarix have set up a major mining operation right on top of the moss caves. They're using the crystals to power their weapons and ships. Getting close enough too? Harvest moss will be almost impossible." "Almost impossible isn't the same as impossible," Minho said quietly. Communications officer Jang Minji turned from her station with a worried expression. "Sir, there's something else. I've been analyzing Scarix communication patterns. They're planning something big. There's talk about a major raid on human settlements in this sector." "When?" asked Security Chief Lee Do-yeon. "Soon, maybe within the week." The implications hit everyone at once. If the Scarix were planning attacks, the last thing the colony needed was to be caught in their territory trying to steal crystal moss. "Wait," said Tae-young suddenly. "What if we're looking at this wrong? What if instead of sneaking around the Scarix, we use Shadowfang's knowledge to our advantage?" "What do you mean?" Minho asked. "Think about it. Shadowfang has lived in these forests his whole life. He knows every path, every hiding place, every weakness in Scarix defenses. Vortex are ambush predators. They know how to move without being detected." Dr. Kim looked up from her medical tablet. "There's something else we should consider. I've been analyzing Shadowfang's biological samples. His saliva contains enzymes that I've never seen before. These compounds could revolutionize human medicine. They might cure diseases that have plagued our colonies for decades." "You're saying he's valuable to us beyond just this situation?" asked Minho. "Extremely valuable. If we can establish a relationship with his species, the medical benefits alone could save thousands of human lives." Engineer Hyun-woo finished his calculations and looked up. Sir, I can have the first batch of synthetic proteins ready in 6 hours, but we need to make a decision about the long-term plan. Do we risk everything to help them, or do we let nature take its course? Minho stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see Shadowfang sitting patiently near the cave entrance, waiting for news about his mate. The massive predator had not moved from that spot in hours. Minji, what's the status on those Scarix patrols? He asked. They follow predictable patterns, sir, she replied, studying her screens. They have gaps in their coverage every 18 hours when shift changes occur. If we timed it right, we might have a 4-hour window to get in and out. 4 hours to travel 50 kilometers, harvest enough moss for a pregnant Vorthok and her babies, and get back without being detected, summarized Do-Yun. It's not much time. Shadowfang claims he knows secret routes, Tae-Young reminded them. Routes that could cut the travel time in half. Dr. Kim checked her medical readings again. If we start the synthetic proteins now, we can stabilize Moonhowl for about 72 hours. That gives us 3 days to plan and execute a moss-gathering mission. 3 days to potentially start a war with the Scarix, Hyunwoo pointed out. Or 3 days to save 2 lives and maybe gain the most powerful ally humanity has ever had, Tae-Young countered. Minho thought about his 43 colonists, all depending on his decision. He thought about Moonhowl lying in the cave, struggling to keep her babies alive. He thought about Shadowfang's desperate trust in creatures he had every reason to fear. Dr. Kim, start the protein synthesis immediately, he decided. Hyunwoo, I want every piece of equipment checked and ready for a stealth mission. Minji, monitor Scarix communications around the clock. Tae-Young, learn everything you can about Vorthic biology. And sir? Asked Do-Yun, what about weapons? If we're caught in Scarix territory, we go in light and fast. Our best weapons will be stealth and Shadowfang's knowledge of the terrain. If we have to fight our way out, we've already lost. 2 hours later, Dr. Kim administered the first dose of synthetic proteins to Moonhowl. The Silver Vorthok's condition improved almost immediately. Her breathing became easier and her golden eyes grew brighter. Shadowfang watched every movement, and when his mate showed signs of recovery, he looked at the humans with something that could only be described as gratitude. It's working, Dr. Kim reported with relief. Her vital signs are stabilizing. The baby's growth rate is slowing to normal levels. Shadowfang approached Minho carefully and did something remarkable. He gently placed his massive paw on the human's shoulder, a gesture of thanks from a creature that could have crushed him effortlessly. We have 72 hours, Minho told his team. Let's make them count. Outside, the first test had succeeded. But everyone knew the real challenge was just beginning. They had committed themselves to a mission that could save 2 alien lives or destroy their entire colony. The gamble had been made. Now they had to see if their bet on compassion would pay off. The stealth shuttle Starfish lifted off from the colony landing pad just as the twin moons of Kepler 442b disappeared behind the mountains. Pilot Bae Seung-jin kept the engines on minimum power to avoid detection while tactical specialist Han Yuna monitored Scarix patrol frequencies from the co-pilot seat. In the cargo bay, Shadowfang crouched uncomfortably in the small space. His massive frame barely fit, but he had insisted on coming despite the risk. Forman Kong Minho sat across from him, studying the route maps one more time. How are you holding up back there? Seung-jin called from the cockpit. He's fine, Minho replied, watching the great Volf's yellow eyes. Aren't you, friend? Shadowfang made a soft rumbling sound that they had learned meant agreement. Over the past day, simple communication between human and Vorthok had improved dramatically. Pictures scratched in dirt had given way to basic sounds and gestures. Sir, Yuna reported, I'm picking up 3 Scarix patrol ships in the northern quadrant. They're following standard search patterns, but they're definitely more active than usual. Can we avoid them? Minho asked. With Shadowfang's route, yes, but it means flying through the canyon system. One mistake, and we'll hit the rocks. Seung-jin's hands were steady on the controls. I can handle the canyons. Just keep those scarix. Is he looking somewhere else? The shuttle dropped low, skimming just above the treetops. The forest below was dark green and purple in the alien starlight. Somewhere down there were crystal caves filled with the moss that could save Moonhowl's life. Shadowfang suddenly became alert, his ears pointing forward. He made a warning sound and pointed toward a cluster of rocks ahead. What is it? Minho asked. The Vortex scratched quick symbols on the metal floor. The drawing showed insect-like creatures hiding behind the rocks. Scarix Ground Patrol, Yuna translated, reading her sensors. 4 of them, weapons active. How did he know they were there? Vortex senses are much better than ours, Minho realized. He can probably smell them from here. Sungjin adjusted course to avoid the patrol. This is why we brought him. He's like a living sensor array. They flew for 2 more hours, following a winding path through valleys and canyons that no Scarix patrol would think to check. Shadowfang guided them perfectly, using sounds and gestures to indicate direction changes and potential dangers. Finally, they reached the Crystal Moss Caves. The Scarix had built a small mining outpost directly above the entrance. Bright lights illuminated the area, and armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Well, this is a problem, Sunjin muttered as he set the shuttle down in a hidden clearing 2 kilometers away. How many guards? Minho asked Yuna. I count 12 Scarix, plus automated defense systems. They've got the main cave entrance completely covered. Shadowfang studied the tactical display that Yuna showed him. After a moment, he began drawing new pictures on the floor. These showed a different route, one that led to a smaller cave opening on the far side of the mountain. There's another way in, Minho understood, a back entrance. The readings show that opening is much smaller, Yuna said, checking her geological scanner. A human could barely fit through it. Shadowfang drew more pictures. These showed him staying outside while the humans went through the narrow opening to gather moss. He's offering to create a distraction, Minho realized. Draw the guards away while we sneak in the back way. Sir, that's incredibly dangerous for him, Yuna pointed out. If 12 armed Scarix focus on him, But Shadowfang was already moving toward the shuttle door. His meaning was clear. His mate was dying, and he would face any danger to save. The plan was simple but risky. Shadowfang would approach the main entrance openly, drawing all attention to himself. While the guards dealt with the massive predator, Minho and Yuna would slip through the back cave and gather as much crystal moss as possible. Remember, we need him alive, Minho told Yuna as they prepared their equipment. If something goes wrong, we get him out of there. Understood, sir. They moved through the dark forest toward the mining outpost. Shadowfang's black fur made him nearly invisible in the shadows, while the humans used night vision goggles to navigate. At the designated spot, they separated. Minho and Yuna circled around to the back of the mountain while Shadowfang continued toward the main entrance. The narrow cave opening was exactly where he had indicated, hidden behind a curtain of hanging vines. It's tight, Yuna whispered as she squeezed through the opening, but manageable. Inside, the cave was filled with the soft blue glow of crystal moss. The walls were covered with the plant they needed, growing in thick carpets wherever the special crystals provided light and minerals. Start harvesting, Minho ordered, pulling out collection containers. We need enough for at least a week. They worked quickly, cutting away sections of moss and packing them carefully. The plant was delicate and would die quickly if not preserved properly. Each container had to be sealed and climate-controlled. Suddenly, alarm sounds echoed through the mountain from the mining outpost above. Shadowfang had made his move. Sir, listen to that, Yuna said, pausing in her work. Through the rock walls, they could hear weapon fire and Scarix shouts of alarm. But underneath it all was another sound that made their blood run cold. Shadowfang was roaring, the deep, terrifying sound that had made Vortex legendary across the galaxy. He's not just creating a distraction, Minho realized. He's actually fighting them. More weapon fire erupted above, followed by screams of pain that definitely did not come from a Vortex. Shadowfang was not just surviving the encounter. He was winning. How much more do we need? Yuna asked urgently. 2 more containers should be enough, Minho replied, working faster. The sounds of battle continued above them. Occasionally, the cave shook as something heavy hit the ground. Once, they heard a Scarix screaming in terror before the sound was cut off abruptly. Finished, Minho announced, sealing the last container. Let's get out of here. They squeezed back through the narrow opening and ran toward their meeting point. The forest was alive with emergency lights and searching beams as Scarix reinforcements arrived at the outpost. At the rendezvous spot, they waited anxiously for Shadowfang. The sounds of fighting had stopped, but there was no sign of their alien. Ally, where is he? Yuna whispered. Maybe he's being careful, Minho hoped. Making sure he's not followed. Then they heard footsteps in the forest. Heavy, careful footsteps that could only belong to one creature. Shadowfang emerged from the shadows, and Minho gasped at what he saw. The great Volf was wounded. Claw marks crossed his shoulder, and one ear was torn. But he was alive, and more importantly, he was carrying something. In his massive jaws, Shadowfang held an unconscious Scarix warrior. What are you doing? Minho asked in alarm. Shadowfang gently placed the Scarix on the ground. The insect-like alien was badly hurt but still breathing. Then the Vorthak did something incredible. He began tending to the creature's wounds with the same care he had shown his own mate. He's saving an enemy, Yuna said in amazement. Shadowfang looked at them and made soft sounds, gesturing toward the wounded Scarix. His meaning was clear. This creature was hurt and needed help, regardless of which species it belonged to. Sir, we need to go, Yuna urged. More patrols will be here soon. But Minho was staring at Shadowfang with new understanding. The galaxies. Most feared predator was showing mercy to an enemy who had been trying to kill him moments before. Help me get them both to the shuttle, Minho decided. We're not leaving anyone behind. As they carried the wounded Scarix toward their ship, Minho realized something important had happened during this mission. They had not just gathered moss to save Moonhowl. They had witnessed something that changed everything he thought he knew. About Vortex, these were not mindless killers. They were creatures of honor, capable of mercy even toward their enemies. The hunt had been successful, but the real discovery was just beginning. Dr. Kim Solman had delivered many babies during her medical career, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Moonhowl lay in the specially prepared medical bay, her silver fur damp with sweat as her body prepared to bring new life into the world. The crystal moss extract flowed through in 4-line, providing the nutrients her babies desperately needed. How is she doing? Asked junior medic Lee Chae-young, monitoring the alien vital signs on screens that had been hastily modified. FOR Vorthek physiology? Better than expected, Dr. Kim replied, though worry showed in her voice. The moss extract is working perfectly. The Vorthek births are completely different from human ones. I'm having to guess at everything. Shadowfang paced anxiously near. His mate sighed. The great black Volf had barely left the medical bay since returning from the successful Moss mission. His yellow eyes followed every movement the medical team made, watching for any sign of danger to his family. Sir? Called Park Ji-hoon from the communications station. We have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple Scarix ships approaching the colony. Forman Kong Minho looked up from where he had been studying Vorthek medical data. How many ships? At least 15, maybe more. They'll be here in less than 2 hours. They must have traced us back from the mining outpost, Security Chief Lee Do-yun said grimly. We knew this was a possibility. Minho felt his stomach sink. The worst possible timing. Just as Moonhowl was going into labor, their colony was about to face the largest Scarix attack in years. Get everyone to emergency stations, he ordered. Prepare all defenses. And get the families into the deep bunkers. Sir, what about the medical bay? Asked Dr. Kim. Moonhowl can't be moved. If we try to relocate her now, we'll lose both mother and babies. Then we defend this position, Minho decided. No matter what? Shadowfang had heard the conversation and understood the danger. He moved to the medical bay entrance and settled into a defensive position. His message was clear. Nothing would reach his family while he still lived. 20 minutes later, Moonhowl's labor began in earnest. Dr. Kim worked frantically to monitor the birth while Lee Chae-young assisted with equipment that had never been designed for alien medicine. Her heart rate is spiking, Chae-young reported, and the baby's positions are wrong. They're tangled together. What does that mean? Minho asked. It means we might lose them all, Dr. Kim said quietly. Human babies would never survive this kind of complication. I don't know if Vorthak babies are different. Outside, the colony's defensive weapons came online with mechanical humming sounds. Through the medical bay windows, they could see colonists running to their positions as the first Scarix ships appeared in the sky. We need to try the nanobots, Dr. Kim decided suddenly. What nanobots? Minho asked. Human medical nanobots. Microscopic? Robots designed to help with difficult births. But they've never been tested on alien physiology. They could save the babies or they could kill them. Shadow Fang was watching the conversation intently. Though he could not understand the words, he could sense the urgency in their voices. When Dr. Kim looked at him questioningly, he moved closer to his mate and made soft, encouraging sounds. He's telling us to try, Minho realized. He trusts. U.S. The first explosion shook the colony as Scarix's weapons struck the outer defenses. Through the communication system, they could hear Do-yun coordinating the defense. North Wall is under heavy fire, came his voice. They're concentrating on the main power grid. Dr. Kim made her decision. Chae-young, prepare the nanobots for injection. If we're going to do this, it has to be now. The tiny robots were injected directly into Moonhowl's bloodstream. Within minutes, they would reach the babies and begin untangling the umbilical cords that threatened their lives. But the process was dangerous for the mother, too. Her blood pressure is dropping, Chae-young reported with alarm. Another explosion rocked the colony closer this time. The lights flickered as the power grid took damage. Can we move her to the backup medical facility? Minho asked. No time, Dr. Kim said, her hands working quickly. The babies are coming now? Shadow Fang pressed closer to his mate, offering what comfort he could. His presence seemed to calm Moonhowl, and her vital signs stabilized slightly. Sir, called technician Oh Sung-min over the communications system. I've modified the mining equipment like you asked. The Scarix are in for a surprise. Through the windows, they could see the modified mining lasers swiveling to track incoming Scarix fighters. The industrial equipment had been turned into formidable weapons. First baby is crowning, Dr. Kim announced. Chae-young, be ready with the warming unit. The next few minutes were chaos. Outside, the battle raged as human defenders fought desperately against overwhelming odds. Inside the medical bay, Dr. Kim fought her own battle to bring new life safely into the world. Got the first one, she said with relief as a small silver shape emerged. The baby Vorthak was tiny compared to its parents, no bigger than a house cat, but it was alive and breathing. It's beautiful, Chae-young whispered. Carefully cleaning the newborn Shadow Fang made soft sounds of joy at seeing his first child. But the delivery was only half finished. Second baby is in distress, Dr. Kim reported. Heart rate is dropping fast. Another explosion, much closer. The medical bay windows cracked from the shockwave. Do-yun, report, Minho called into his communicator. They've broken through the east perimeter, came the reply. We're falling back to secondary positions. The nanobots aren't working on the second baby, Dr. Kim said desperately. The umbilical cord is wrapped too tightly around its neck. Moonhowl was weakening from the difficult birth. Her breathing became labored and her golden eyes began to close. We're losing her, Chae-young said. Shadow Fang sensed his mate's distress. He moved closer and began making deep rumbling sounds, almost like he was singing to her. The vibrations seemed to penetrate through her exhaustion, and her eyes opened again. He's calling to her, Minho realized, giving her strength. Dr. Kim made a desperate decision. I'm going to have to perform emergency surgery. Right here, right now, without proper equipment. Can you save them? I don't know, but if I don't try, we'll definitely lose them both. The surgery was performed with mining tools sterilized in the medical bay's cleaning units. Dr. Kim's hands never shook as she worked to save both mother and child while explosions continued outside. "Got it," she finally announced. "The cord is free." The second baby emerged moments later, smaller than the first, but alive. As Dr. Kim cleared its airways, it let out a tiny howl that made Shadowfang's eyes shine with pride. "Two healthy babies," Cheung reported with exhaustion and relief. Both breathing normally. Outside, the sounds of battle were changing. The modified mining equipment was turning the tide, forcing the Scarix to retreat. "Sir?" came Doyun's voice over the communicator. "They're pulling back." "We did it. The colony is safe." Moonhowl was weak but stable as she looked at her two newborn cubs. The first was silver like her mother, while the second had inherited his father's black fur. Shadowfang gently nuzzled each baby, then looked at the humans who had saved his family. "What should we call them?" Minho asked. Shadowfang made soft sounds while looking at each baby in turn. Then he drew simple pictures on the floor with his claw. "Stars and Dawn," Cheung translated, looking at the drawings. "Starfang and Dawnhowl." As if approving of their names, both babies made tiny howling sounds that filled the medical bay with joy. Dr. Kim checked her equipment one final time. "Everyone is stable. Mother and babies are going to be fine." Through the cracked windows, they could see the last Scarix ships fleeing toward space. The colony had survived its greatest test, but more importantly, they had witnessed the birth of something unprecedented. Two Vorthak cubs who would grow up knowing humans as family, not enemies. The future had just become much more interesting. 3 days after the birth of Starfang and Dawnhowl, the long-range sensors detected something that made everyone in the colony nervous. A pack of 12 Vorthaks was approaching through the forest, moving fast and with obvious purpose. "They're not trying to hide," reported Communications Officer Jang Minji, studying the sensor data. "They're coming straight for us." Forman Kong Minho stood in the control room, watching the approaching signals on the screen. Beside him, Shadowfang was perfectly still, but his yellow eyes showed worry. "Are they friendly?" asked Security Chief Lee Do-yun, his hand moving toward his weapon controls. Shadowfang made low sounds and scratched pictures in the floor. The drawings showed wolves in aggressive poses, with one larger Volf at the front. "That's his pack, colony." Administrator Kwan Yeho realized. "They've come looking for him." "And they don't look happy," added Cultural Liaison Song Eun-bi, studying Shadowfang's body language. In the medical bay, Dr. Kim So-man was checking on Moonhowl and the babies when the alarm started. The silver female raised her head with concern, sensing the tension in the air. "What's happening?" asked junior medic Lee Chae-young. "Shadowfang's family has arrived," Dr. Kim explained. "And they probably think we're holding him prisoner." The pack emerged from the forest just as the sun reached its highest point. 12 massive Vorthaks, each one a deadly predator, arranged themselves in a semicircle facing the colony's main gate. At their head was the largest Vorthak anyone had ever seen, with scars across his dark red fur that spoke of countless battles. "That must be their alpha," Minho said quietly. "He's even bigger than Shadowfang." The alpha, who they would learn was called Blood Moon, let out a roar that shook the colony's windows. It was a challenge, demanding answers about their missing pack member. Shadowfang responded from inside the colony, his own roar carrying different tones. Even without understanding the language, the humans could hear that he was trying to explain something. "He's telling them we're not enemies," Song Eun-bi said, watching the interaction. But they don't believe him. Blood Moon roared again, this time with clear anger. Then he did something that made everyone's blood run cold. He began walking toward the colony's entrance, and the other 11 Vorthaks followed. "Sir, what do we do?" asked Do-yun. "Our weapons might stop 1 or 2 of them, but 12. We don't fight," Minho decided. "Shadowfang, can you talk to them? Make them understand?" But Shadowfang was already moving toward the entrance. He stopped at the gate and looked back at Minho with an expression that clearly said, "Trust me. Open." "The gate," Minho ordered. Sir, that's suicide, Doyan protested. Open it. The massive doors slid open, and Shadowfang walked out to meet his pack. The moment he appeared, several of the younger Vortex made happy sounds and moved toward him. But Blood Moon snarled a command that stopped them. The Alpha and Shadowfang faced each other in the open ground between the forest and the colony. Even from a distance, the tension was visible. These were two powerful predators, and only one could lead the pack. Blood Moon began making aggressive sounds while pacing in a circle around Shadowfang. The message was clear even to humans. He was challenging Shadowfang's decision to trust the weak prey species. It's a formal challenge, Songgumbi realized. Winner takes control of the pack. Can Shadowfang win? Asked Minho. I don't know, she admitted. But if he loses, we might lose our only ally. The challenge began without warning. Blood Moon lunged at Shadowfang with claws extended, aiming for the throat. But Shadowfang was ready. He rolled aside and struck back, his own claws finding marks in the Alpha's thick fur. The two giants fought with savage intensity, rolling and clawing across the open ground. Both were bleeding within minutes, but neither would yield. We have to help him, Doyan said, moving toward his weapons. No, Minho said firmly. This is their way. If we interfere, we prove that Shadowfang is weak. The fight continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Both wolves were exhausted and wounded when something unexpected happened. From the colony's medical bay came the sound of babies crying, tiny howls that could only belong to Starfang and Dawnhowl. The sound stopped both fighters immediately. Blood Moon's ears pointed toward the colony in confusion. He had not known about the cubs. Shadowfang made soft sounds toward the medical bay, then looked at Blood Moon. Slowly, carefully, he began walking toward the colony entrance. He was inviting his Alpha to see something important. He's bringing him to see the babies, Dr. Kim said over the communicator. Should I allow it? Yes, Minho decided. Let them. Both in. The sight that greeted Blood Moon in the medical bay changed everything. Moonhowl was lying comfortably on soft bedding, surrounded by human medical equipment that was monitoring her health. Her two babies nursed contentedly, clearly healthy and strong, but what shocked the Alpha most was seeing Dr. Kim check the baby's health with gentle, careful movements. A human was touching Vorthok cubs, and the cubs were not afraid. Shadowfang made explaining sounds, gesturing toward the medical equipment and the humans who had saved his family. Slowly, Blood Moon began to understand what had really happened. He's realizing that we helped, not hurt, Song Yunbi whispered. Blood Moon looked around the medical bay, taking in the advanced equipment and the obvious care that had been given to the new mother and her babies. Then he did something remarkable. He lowered his massive head toward Dr. Kim in a gesture of respect. I think we just made friends, Dr. Kim said with amazement. Over the next several hours, the entire Vorthek pack was introduced to the colony. The humans were nervous at first, but it quickly became clear that these predators had no intention of causing harm. Young Vorthex played carefully with human children under the watchful eyes of both species adults. Engineers demonstrated human technology while Vorthex showed their hunting techniques. Scientists like Yun Tae-young eagerly studied Vorthak biology while the wolves observed human medical procedures with fascination. This is unprecedented, Juanejo told Minho as they watched the interactions. Two species that should be natural enemies learning from each other? It's more than that, Minho replied. Look at the children. Human and Vorthak young were playing together in the colony's garden area. The baby cubs, Starfang and Dawnhowl, were being gently petted by human children while their Vorthak aunts and uncles watched protectively. They're becoming family, Song Yunbi observed with wonder. As the day ended, Blood Moon made a formal announcement to both species. Through Shadowfang's translation and careful gestures, his message became clear. The pack was staying. They would protect the human colony as they would protect their own cubs. But why? Minho asked Shadowfang. Why are they willing to change everything they've ever known? Shadowfang's answer came in the form of actions rather than words. He brought Starfang to Minho and gently placed the tiny cub in the human's arms. The baby Vorthak looked up at Minho with bright golden eyes and made a soft sound of contentment. "Because you saved our future," Song Yunbi translated the meaning. "And now we share that future together." 3 months later, mining colony Delta 7 had become something that no one could have imagined. Human engineers worked alongside Vorthak scouts too,